fear through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, danced a jig over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son, still have me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Disciples of Ed here on the Always Next Year podcast. I'm your host, Rob. I'm joined by Steve today. Steve, how's it going?
Well, Andrew McDonald's no longer a Flyer, so that's good.
That is something that I don't think anybody will complain about, because Andrew McDonald was just a bad defenseman, and he ate up a lot of cap space. So, to have him out of here, I think a lot of people are really relieved about that.
I fist pumped, and my tellers were just staring at me, not knowing what happened.
Okay.
And, and I'm like, Andrew McDonald got bought out. Everything's okay in this moment.
And they understood what you're excited about, right?
Not really.
Yeah, because they're probably not Flyers fans.
Yeah. The one that is, he doesn't pay attention.
I wouldn't say that I celebrated as hard as I did when the Phillies signed Bryce Harper, but
yeah.
I was pretty excited about it. I did like you did a little bit of a fist pump. I kind of, I stood up off my couch in excitement and just kind of let the adrenaline go through me there.
I also had a few people in the parking lot looking at me, so that was a bit awkward.
Oh, man. Well, suffice it to say that we're very happy that Andrew McDonald is no longer a Philadelphia Flyer. So, with the McDonald buyout happening, we kind of just went through our immediate reactions to that, but what's your takeaway from it? Are there any more moves coming in that regard, or what's the effect that's going to have on the team?
Well, I mean, the trades that happened, but some of them I didn't foresee, like the Justin Braun trade, but
yeah, I don't think anybody saw that coming.
Yeah, but the buyout you knew was coming. It was either going to be that or he's just your seventh defenseman, but I prefer this route where it's just get him away from the team, don't even give him a chance to hinder them in any way.
I mean, he's like the most expensive seventh defenseman in the entire NHL, so
right.
What good does it do to have him on the roster? I'm glad that they made this move. It frees them up to do some other things with the cap space and also no longer have that wasted roster spot there. So
yeah, even if they did send him down, there was still the potential of calling him up in an injury and then just bad play as usual.
Bad play, lots of turnovers, lots of people calling for his head, and finally, no longer the case. So that's not the only move the Flyers have made in terms of their defense. They've actually made a few so far, including one today. But we'll talk about the one that was made a few days ago first, and that is trading Radko Gudas to the Washington Capitals straight up for Matt Niskanen. Did the Flyers get the better of this deal here?
I don't mind the swap, but I do mind retaining salary to help a division rival's salary cap issues. I do think it was more so done for the style of play. Radko Gudas was pretty good here. He played about number 4 minutes, which is fine. He can do that. He can kill penalties. As long as he's not getting suspended.
That's the biggest issue. He's good for 2 or 3 suspensions every year.
Yeah, and Niskanen he's kind of fallen off the past couple years, but he was playing big minutes when the Capitals won the Cup, so that's good in itself, but I'm just scared that they're going to be overplaying him. I feel like it's going to be Provorov and Niskanen on the top pair, which I don't think is really what you want at this point in Niskanen's career.
Yeah, it might not be ideal. I think the move, overall, I think it was a good trade, though, because Niskanen is a little bit more of a well-rounded defenseman than Gudas is. He's faster. He can move around a little bit better. Gudas is kind of an ode to the old-school NHL days where he's not as fast, but he's bigger and a little bit more of an enforcer, a guy who focuses on the physicality more.
Yeah, I will say that when we got Radko Gudas in that Braden Coburn trade, I didn't think that he would do as well as he did here. I thought he would have been that sixth guy, just kills penalties and everything, but he surprised me and actually played pretty well here.
Yeah, it's not to say that Gudas had a bad career in Philadelphia. He certainly was effective, and I think he was good more often than not, but to me, Matt Niskanen is just, he's more well-rounded. He's a better overall defenseman than Radko Gudas is. So if we have to eat a little bit of Gudas' contract to make that trade happen, personally, I think it's a good deal. Like you said, I'm not crazy about eating cap space for a division rival. Yeah. But given the circumstances, I think it's acceptable at least to do it in that situation.
Yeah, now the scary thing is when Radko Gudas kills one of our players.
Yeah, or when he goes out and he scores a hat-trick against us, including an overtime winner to knock us out of the playoffs.
From all three of his, I got the puck at the blue line, all I can do now is shoot.
Yeah.
I didn't mind that, though.
He'll have one of those where he shoots from the blue line that deflects off of 17 guys into the net. He gets credit for it. He'll have another one like he had with the Flyers, the center ice slap shot.
Oh, yeah.
That
I would have kept trying that if I were him.
1,000% on the goalie.
Yeah.
But, yeah, to me it's a good deal. It's an even deal, but I think it works out well for the Flyers. And continuing with the trades, another one made today. Justin Braun comes to the Flyers from San Jose in exchange for a second-round pick in this year's draft and a third-round pick in next year's draft. And like you said, this is a kind of a surprising move. And there were some other potential trades there that might have been, better off for the Flyers, but they ended up going this route. What are your thoughts on this trade?
Well, all the cap space that they gained from the Andrew McDonald buyout is now gone because they traded for Justin Braun, whose cap hit is about similar. I don't understand why we're trading 2 draft picks. I have bad memories of the Flyers trading a second and a third round pick for a defenseman. And the last time I believe it was Andrew McDonald.
Yeah, we're actually going to talk about this later in the episode about bad trades. But yeah, I kind of liken Braun, his playing style, a little bit to Andrew McDonald as well. One of the things that stuck out to me about Justin Braun, 0.7 takeaways to turnovers. Takeaways to giveaways. That's for every 7 times that he takes away the puck, he gives it up 10 times. And that was 4th among San Jose defensemen. Erik Karlsson, who was giving away the puck like candy on Halloween in the playoffs, had a better takeaway to giveaway percentage than Justin Braun did. So that's one thing that's really alarming to me. And really because Andrew McDonald had the same issue when he was a Flyer. He gave the puck away a lot. And I don't think we're really improving in that regard now.
Yeah, everything that I've been seeing about Braun is that he's kind of the anti-McDonald in zone entries, where he actually disrupts them, gets a stick on it. He's actually going up and not just gracefully saying, here, come into my own zone, which was every single time with Andrew McDonald. So in that sense, I can see some positives. I don't mind Justin Braun as a player. I just don't like the draft capital that we gave for him. Again, we're helping another team out with their cap situation, which would kind of like lessen what we're giving up for them. I think the third, even if it was just this year, should have been enough, but I'm not too confident in Chuck Fletcher's trading right now. He just seems to be helping people out because he has cap space, but this is how you go back into cap hell.
Yeah, this is basically, Paul Holmgren made better deals to bring better players in, but he put the Flyers in cap hell because he was much the same way. He was willing to eat contracts and, pay guys a lot of money. And if Chuck Fletcher is the same way, then the Flyers might find themselves right back where they were before Hextall was able to relieve a lot of the cap issues that they had.
Yeah, I appreciate the aggressiveness. I'm just kind of scared because you just see that we start off with so much cap space. We still have 5 major restricted free agents to re-sign, and you just see it starting to dwindle down now, even before free agency has started. So it's a little bit concerning for me, but I'm just trying to see where it goes because there's still a lot of potential with this team, and they're still pretty set up in prospects and everything.
There is a lot of potential with this team. It's just frustrating to see that there were different options out there defensively that they could have made trades for that would have been more affordable and wouldn't have required eating cap space. Mm-hmm. And the Flyers chose to go this route, which, like you said, it's basically a McDonald contract for a guy who's not worth that kind of money. Yeah. So it's a frustrating trade for me, and I'm sure it is for a lot of other people.
Yeah, I'm sure it can work out because, now you're pushing Hag definite to 7th, maybe 8th with more in there too. So there's definitely got to be another trade in the works of a defenseman going out. Hopefully it's Hag and not Ghost.
I've heard rumors for both.
Yeah. If they trade Ghost, it has to be for something very worthwhile, but I don't think he'll get it, which is why I'm saying that you should keep him. I know you disagree.
I'm not a big Ghost guy.
Which
I
is
am
crazy.
admittedly not a big Ghost guy, and yes, I know it is crazy. Well, to some people it's crazy. To me, it's not.
Yeah, well, right now, your pairings are Provorov and I'm going to assume Niskanen, and then Sanheim and Braun, and then you have Ghost and Myers. So your sliding goes back to a third pair role where he's going to be running the power play, which I think suits him very well. Basically, he's playing the role of a fifth defenseman, but I think he can do more. And his contract still is in line with that, especially with the points he'll put up on the power play. I think it works out in that sense for him. So he's not being overpaid given his ice time, but he will still be producing. And I think he's been put in a much better situation. So he doesn't have much responsibilities and he can go out and do his own thing. It's just a matter of him meshing well with Myers, which I think is possible.
Do you really want to put Phil Myers in that kind of a position, though, as a young defenseman where he's inevitably going to have to make up for all the times that Ghost gets himself out of position because of his offensive aggressiveness? Maybe, do you think it would be more beneficial to put Myers with a guy who's a little bit more defensively responsible?
The only other way I can think of it is switching Myers and Braun, which I think could help Ghost out a lot. And then you have like that younger pair of Sanheim and Myers, which both players have all the potential in the world. There's a lot of things they can do, but I think Fletcher's goal was to get right-handed defensemen that can help steady the younger guys, which is why he went for these two 32-year-olds, I think.
Yes.
In Braun and Niskanen. So I can see his ideology, his ideas. I can't speak. I can see his philosophy, but I just think he's spending too much to get these players when he could go elsewhere to still get this similar type, but we'll see what happens.
It's a little bit strange how he's going about it, but I'm trying to keep an open mind to it, and maybe he's got bigger moves in store for the remainder of the offseason. We'll see how that goes. Speaking of trades, actually, I'm sorry, did you have anything else you want to add in?
I thought I did, and then I lost it.
If it comes back to you, feel free to shout it out.
Yeah.
But speaking of trades, this is not the Flyers, but it's relevant to the Flyers because it happened within the division. Jacob Trouba going to the Rangers. And they didn't give up a whole... I forget exactly. I should have it in my notes here. Unfortunately, I forgot to put it in my notes. But they didn't give up a whole lot to get him. And the Flyers, they could have thrown Haig in their 11 in there to get Trouba. Decided not to do it. What do you make of that?
I'm going to go right now and say that the Rangers fleeced Winnipeg, given that they do sign Trouba. Pretty much what the trade boils down to is the Jets traded for Kevin Hayes. They traded a first-round pick. So that first-round pick that they got for Trouba was actually in the Kevin Hayes deal. So they basically traded Jacob Trouba for Kevin Hayes, 26 games of it, I believe, 20 to 30.
Something like that.
Yeah, and then this Pionk guy who I guess has good potential and he's right-handed, which everybody wants a right-handed defenseman. And then I think that was it. There might be like one more thing attached to it, but
I thought there was. I could be wrong.
Maybe it's the fifth that we gave them for Hayes, but still, it's pretty bad trade for such a player like Jacob Trouba. But again, it depends if he signs there.
And it's a bad trade for Winnipeg too. You're talking about a team that if they didn't get upset by St. Louis, maybe they win the Western Conference last year.
Yeah, I was kind of pulling for them.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were. But the Trouba deal, they could have had so much more. Like I said, they could have had Haig in the 11 from the Flyers. I'm not sure if that fell apart on the Flyers' end or if it fell apart on the Jets' end or what the deal was there. I'm
going to say that I don't think Fletcher felt confident in re-signing Trouba, or he was just scared of what he would cost. Meanwhile, he's getting two 32-year-old defensemen for a combined cap of $9 million.
That's a very valid point, and they're also already in the process of trying to sign one of the guys they already traded for, in Kevin Hayes.
Right.
So having two guys that you traded for and needing to sign both of them might be a little bit more of a daunting task than just having one guy. Yeah,
but at least the Trouba is a restricted free agent, so at least if, say, he gets offer sheeted, then hey, we're getting more draft capital back, but still, that's not something you hope for if you're trading, say, what was the Carchidi trade idea? Was 11th and Haig?
11th and Haig, yeah. Haig, I always forget how to pronounce it.
I always just say Haig. Sometimes I don't know. Depends on the mood. But that, it does intrigue me, but I'm just not 100% certain I would have pulled the trigger on it. I do love Trouba as a defenseman. He's great, but the 11th pick, I just think you can go elsewhere to fill your defensive void and use everything else. You could use the 11th overall pick to get maybe package with somebody else to get a better center or a better winger. I think that might be the thought with the Flyers moving on to, as we've mentioned before, I think that there's a bombshell trade, a blockbuster trade coming up for the Flyers still. It is strange going on the Twitter every day now and just just thinking, what are the Flyers going to do now? It's been
a
5
while.
years?
It has been a while. One thing I did want to mention, though, is covering the Flyers 2 seasons ago, I did get to cover a game against the Rangers when Neil Pionk was, I think he's in like his first 3 or 4 games in the National Hockey League at that point. He'd just been called up. And I heard some of the Rangers beat reporters who were sitting behind me talking about how he had a pretty high ceiling.
Yeah.
How he was expected to, at one point, potentially evolve into an all-star caliber defenseman. So the Rangers seem to be relatively high on Pionk at one point. Obviously not high enough that they want to keep him around, but maybe the Jets see the same thing, and I think that they're actually getting good value with him.
Yeah, I just think the Rangers are... They made some pretty good moves. You know, they even won the goddamn draft lottery again in the second. So I think because they got the second overall pick that they are closer than I really think they are, which is why they're making this move for Trouba, and then they're going to, I believe, re-sign him. So he'll get like the 7 years, and then they'll have him and Brady Skjei. I don't think that's how you pronounce it, but that's just
Brady
how I
Shea.
pronounce it. Yeah, I just say Skjei just to piss off my Rangers fan friend.
I mean, that's how it's spelled.
Yeah. So I think they're hoping to have that pairing, and there was an Instagram post where it's like, I think they were both at a wedding, and they're both very close, so I believe they've been friends for a long time, so they're trying to get to know this brotherly bond for their top pair, which, sure, good for you, but you don't have anybody else on your team, besides Longfist.
Yeah, well, my buddy Dustin's a Rangers fan, and he actually listens to this show, but I know that he's been raving about the Trouba trade. He actually texted me, and I haven't had a chance to respond. Sorry, Dustin. I will get back to you about that. But
when you do that, also tell them that Matt Zugrell is going to be a Flyer.
yeah, and I'm also hoping that trade blows up in their face so that he can be pissed off about that. But the Flyers, with the Justin Braun trade today, a little bit less cap room than they initially had. Still have some players that they need to pay. They need to pay Provy, need to pay Sanheim, need to pay Konechny, and also need to come to a deal with Kevin Hayes. And then beyond that, hopefully some free agent transactions. Where are your priorities with doling out the money?
Right now, RFAs. I'm thinking that Provorov gets around like $6 million. I'm hoping that Konechny signs for something like 5 years, $5 million a year. Lawton and Hartman, they'll be on the lower end, like $2 million, probably max for them, like each. And then Sanheim could go anywhere between 3 and 4-ish million.
I think Sanheim's on the upper end of that. I think it gets closer to 4, maybe even a little bit north.
Depends how many years, really. How many years they give him. If they want to go the bridge route or longer. But I don't know, because he did have a very good year. But other than that, you're going off of 1 year. I would probably go bridge around like maybe 2 years, like 3-ish million, and then evaluate it later on. Other than that, I'm not too high on Kevin Hayes, especially with the rumored price of like 6 years, like almost $7 million.
That's a little bit rough, yeah, especially in a long-term deal. If it was a shorter-term deal, then maybe you eat it. But if you're stuck with them for 6 years and after year 3 or 4 you find it impossible to move them, that's not a good deal.
Yeah, and he can play wing, and so you can maybe shift him to the wing when Patrick comes up, and maybe Frost or Farabee are very good at center as opposed to wing. So you can do that, but he's still a very overpriced winger at that point because he would be your second or third liner. Then you have what intrigued me was the Erik Karlsson extension for $11.5 million. All I can think of after that was, please, for the love of God, sign Joey Pabst. Come on, Flyers, you can do it now.
I know, right? It would be beautiful if that happened.
I said it on Twitter. If there's one person that is potentially available that could fix the quote-unquote issues in the locker room and the culture change, it's Joe Pavelski.
Yeah,
he's got the experience. He hasn't won a cup, but he's got the experience. He literally usurped Joe Thornton of the captaincy.
He literally died on the ice and then came back and helped his team to the conference finals.
And they rallied around him, and he can play center. He can also play wing, but I think he's your perfect stopgap second-line center, and then Patrick will grow into it, and then you can just move Pavelski to the right wing, and then he's a sniper.
Yeah, that would be a nice move if they could bring in Joe Pavelski. I'm not sure if it'll happen, but it certainly will be a great addition.
I said it on Twitter. I would even go 3 years, $27 million, so $9 million a year. And I think he's 34. So
yeah, but he's one of those guys though who, when he's 37 years old, I don't think he's going to have a steep drop off like some of these guys do. I think that he's got some longevity in him, and he's a guy who can play at a high level until his late 30s.
I agree. And like you said, he literally died on the ice and came back and still played really well.
That was pretty crazy how that happened. But I want to go back to Kevin Hayes for a second. Would you be more keen on a long-term deal for him if they can front-load the contract?
I guess. So what? You're already planning ahead to dump him off to Arizona in like 4 years?
That's the thought, yeah. That's the thought, that he'll be a light enough cap hit by like the 4th or 5th year of his deal that the Flyers won't have as much of an issue getting rid of him. But they'll have to pay heavily up front, though.
Yeah, I guess you could do that. I mean, we got Hextall made a steal of that JVR signing, which was $7 million a year for 5 years, where you're not giving him too many years, but you're just giving him more money per year, which is something I like, which is why I would do that with Joe Pavelski. So if you're getting Hayes for like 4 years and then it's like $7 million a year, I could think about it because we're not going too far in the years. But I can see a situation where they're doing what you say. So they do 6 years, and then a lot of it is signing bonuses and, to fit it out so it's not cap circumvention, because they're focused on that now because of the bullshit of the Chris Pronger deal. He was making like $900. He was making the veterans minimum for his last years.
Yeah.
So if you do that where he's only making like say like $2 million his last like 2 years, then you could ship it off. So like Arizona's not paying much. It's just against the cap and they have cap space. I could see that happening. I'm just not too high on him as a player for it.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you're going to be paying, $7-8 million a year in the first few years of the contract, you got to get a guy who's worth it. And I'm not quite sure that Kevin Hayes will be worth it at that point. I
am torn on it because I understand, he played for Vigneault. He did well for Vigneault, and he knows the system. And, he does seem like your prototypical, like, second, third line center, him and Patrick, be able to share up the duties. And then he could eventually go to wing. But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, this is fine. But I'm not sure if I just like the idea of it.
Well, all signs point towards the Flyers doing everything they can to get a deal done there. So we'll see how that plays out. Speaking of off-season moves, though, we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of the great deal that brought Chris Pronger to the Philadelphia Flyers. With that in mind, let's talk about some of our favorite and least favorite, the best and worst trades that the Flyers have made that we've experienced during our lifetime. What do you got on your end?
I'm cheating on this because I was like 2.
But it still counts. You're still alive.
Right? And I saw the aftermath of it. The Eric Lindros trade was the worst trade in Flyers history.
The original one, the one that brought him...
Oh, yes, the original one.
In exchange for Forsberg and all those guys.
Yes, the one that branched out so far that it finally ended when Paul Stastny left Colorado.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, and that was like 2 years ago. So that's like a 15-year branch of a trade tree. It was insane. They already had Forsberg. Yeah. Who knows what happens? Give me a time machine. I would love to go live in that world.
And then inevitably they bring back Forsberg 15 years later, and he's a shell of what he was during the prime of his career.
But, yeah. I did love the Lindros trade when we got rid of him, because I love Kim Janssen. He's one of my top 10 favorite Flyers of all time.
It's an interesting name, and one that, I liked Kim Janssen as well. He's a good, sturdy defenseman. Yeah,
and he was definitely a number 1 for a couple of years here. He deserved it, but he is kind of forgettable to people, I think, but, just
not
a prototypical guy that, like, just did everything well. I still occasionally go back. He's once scored a coast-to-coast goal.
I remember seeing that on Rangers. YouTube. Yeah, I've seen that a few times.
And it's great because of Gary Dornhofer's call. He goes, you know what? Kim Janssen's too good for this league. I remember watching it live, and it was so beautiful. Another trade that I thought was pretty bad at the time, and, I was right, was the Andrew McDonald trade.
Yes.
2nd and 3rd round pick. I literally was so angry. I think I punched the wall at my job. And
don't blame me for that.
Yeah, it was so bad. I saw the rumors, and it was terrible because we traded for him, and then we traded Mazzaros away, I believe. So, you were getting someone while you're getting ready for like a penny UFA, I think, and it just didn't make any sense. I think they only got like a 3rd back for Mazzaros, but like you don't get McDonald. You trade Mazzaros first, and then see what you can get elsewhere. Because once you see that you guys just acquired someone, and then you're trying to ship out a defenseman to, who's going to replace them, the value's already diminished.
That was a strange deal because Mazzaros, for all of his injuries, when he is healthy, he is actually a really solid defenseman.
I just remember going to games, and he just always happened. If it went to overtime, he was scoring the game-winning goal.
Were you at the Washington game? I think it was like 2011 or something.
I think so.
Yeah, I was at that one.
But speaking of Andre Mazzaros, our signing of him or trading for him, whichever, led to us being totally fucked with the salary cap, so we had to trade Simone Gagne. So this is my third terrible trade. Simone Gagne for Matt Walker and a 4th-round pick.
Yeah.
I was of the opinion at that time that we should be trading Jeff Carter, and I love Jeff Carter. I just was thinking maximizing value, getting enough to, fit pieces elsewhere and really get the ball rolling on this team. But then they did that, and it was very emotional to see Gagne's comeback game. I think I almost cried.
Yeah, that was pretty tough.
But how about you for bad trades?
For bad trades, I've only got 2. I was going to go Lindros, but I figured you would take that one.
Oh, yeah. I could go, maybe on Whiskey Ramble, I'll just rant about it.
I will go with one that's relevant to Lindros because there were some rumors surrounding Lindros and Brendamore's wife causing this trade to happen, but getting rid of Rob Brendamore, a huge mistake. That was basically the start of the breakup of that great Flyers team that went to the Cup in '97, kind of breaking them apart, and they went to the conference finals a few times in the early 2000s, but I think if they had Brendamore, maybe that puts them over the hump. Maybe they win the Cup in 2000, maybe they win it in 2004.
Yeah, but 2004, traded Brendamore for Primo.
Yeah, Primo was great, don't get me wrong. Yeah. And obviously Primo scored that big goal in the 5th overtime in 2000 out in Pittsburgh. But I think overall... He was
off the fucking wall great in 2004.
Yeah, he was unbelievable for the most part in the playoffs, a really good playoff performer. But I think overall you just lost too much by giving up Brendamore for him.
I agree, especially when you see what happened, hindsight's 2020, when Primo gets his concussion, Brendamore goes and plays until he's 39, wins the Cup with that 2006 team in Carolina.
Yeah, it was... not a great deal.
I think he even won the Selke in 2007.
It was 2006 or 2007.
Yeah, it could have even been both because he was that fucking good even then.
He was awesome. Yeah, I loved Brendamore. During the brief time that I was a Flyers fan, he was playing here. He was probably one of my favorite players.
So, how about your best trades?
Well, I still had one more bad one that I wanted to go for, and that's trading Bobrovsky to Columbus, just because we ended up with a mess in net for the next however many 5-6 years after that.
Yeah. See, my opinion on that is I understood the trade at the time, only because they fucked up by trading and signing Brizgalov. And I will still always say I wanted us to sign Vokun instead that year and just have the tandem with Bob and Vokun. But once they got Briz, there was nothing you can do with that contract. This was before the amnesty buyouts. So you had to trade Bobrovsky for any value.
In that whole situation, bringing in Brizgalov for the amount of money that they paid, and he underperformed, and then because of that, you're paying all this money to Brizgalov, you don't have room for Bobrovsky, and it was a whole mess, and it was really poorly handled by the front office.
Also poorly handled by Laviolette that previous year in the playoffs by pulling him and then playing Boucher and then pulling Michael Lane, who hadn't even played in the regular season. It just didn't make any sense.
Goddamn circus of goalies.
That was when I started losing my confidence in Peter Laviolette.
I still love Laviolette.
I still appreciate him as a great coach, but I thought it was time to move on. Not that year, but the year after.
All right, so we've gone through some bad trades and brought back some bad memories. Let's talk about a few good ones. And I'm going to talk about the one that we're doing this really in honor of, bringing Chris Pronger just about 10 years ago. I think it's 10 years on the 27th. Really great trade for the Flyers. Unfortunately, that whole Pronger tenure ended poorly with the concussion and whatnot, but he's the guy who elevated them to winning the Eastern Conference, going to the Stanley Cup in 2010. He had so many big plays for them. Really kind of carried Matt Carl in his defensive pairing throughout the season.
Hey, I love Matt Carl.
Yeah, not many people do. Matt Carl wasn't a terrible defenseman, but Chris Pronger made that pairing, though.
He did, and even when Chris Pronger died by getting a knee-infected virus and a concussion, Matt Carl still played well that year. I think he was carrying around Mark Bourdon, I think.
Yeah.
One of the irrelevant prospects we had so many years ago.
Yeah, one of the guys who never had a future in the NHL, but ended up playing for us anyway because we were depleted for defensemen.
Yep.
So yeah, that's my number one. Number two is trading Forsberg, and I think it was Scotty Upshaw to Nashville to bring in Scott Hartnell.
They traded Forsberg for Upshaw, I think Ryan Parent, and a first-round pick, because this is one of my trades too. That was the original one. And then in the offseason, we traded that first-round pick for the rights to Scott Hartnell and Kimmo Timonen.
See, I was confused about that, and I always forget that Timonen was part of that deal, which is crazy because that makes it so much better.
I know. It's just the overall Peter Forsberg to Nashville trade. It was phenomenal. It was great work by Holmgren in the very beginning of his tenure where he was actually good.
One of the few things that Holmgren did that I actually liked was that deal. And Scott Hartnell, probably one of my top 3 favorite Flyers of all time. Kimmo Timonen, one of my favorite Flyers defensemen of all time. Both guys who had some great durability, who did a lot of really good things for this team over the course of. They were both here for about a decade, I believe.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a great trade, and both of those guys were a huge reason why the Flyers kind of got back to being a power in the Eastern Conference and going back to the Stanley Cup.
I gotcha. So since we kind of agreed on that one, since it was an overall broader one, I changed one of mine. So.
Let's hear it.
Alexei Zhitnik for Braden Coburn.
I completely forgot about that trade as well.
Yes, it was ridiculous. We traded a 38-year-old defenseman for a 23-year-old Braden Coburn who ended up being on our top pair for years. He was always solid. Not many people like him here, but he was always very good at his job. He did well. He performed well. Advanced metrics were great, but everyone just seemed to blame him. He was the main whipping boy before Andrew McDonald.
You know what's crazy? That trade was with the Atlanta Thrashers.
Yeah.
They don't even exist anymore.
Yep.
Well, technically they do as the Winnipeg Jets, but they don't exist as the Atlanta Thrashers, and they haven't in a long time. So that kind of speaks as to how long ago that trade happened. And Braden Coburn is still playing in the NHL. He just got a new contract today.
Yeah, good for him. I mean, he's taking an 80% drop in salary, but good for him. Hopefully he still gets, bottom 3 minutes or bottom pair minutes with Tampa, and they're still good. They're really fucking good despite what they did in the playoffs. If you played Coburn, maybe you would have won a game.
Maybe one.
Yeah, at least one. My next one would be Sami Kapanen, acquiring him by giving up Bruno St. Jacques and Pavel Brendel.
That was a hell of a deal. Because, I remember Pavel Brendel and Bruno St. Jacques, but maybe only a handful of people outside from you and I remember those guys.
I honestly don't remember a thing about Bruno St. Jacques besides he was in this trade. I remember Brendel being a very huge disappointment, and just not here, but the whole league.
Yeah, because we got Brendel, I believe, from the Rangers, and there was some pretty high hopes around him that he was going to turn into something, and never did. My only memory of Bruno St. Jacques is he was always sitting in the penalty box.
Yeah, I don't remember that. I just remember him. I only know his name because he was traded for Sami Kapanen, who is my favorite Flyer of all time. My next great trade was in 2008. 2008 was a great run for the Flyers because 2006, 2007 was goddamn travesty of a year. And it was the worst season by a team ever, I think.
Yeah, and somehow they didn't get the top pick because the NHL loves Chicago.
All right, I'm trying not to think about that. I'm already going through bad memories of 2006, 2007.
Well,
just gotta,
that's why you have whiskey, right?
Yeah, I haven't opened it up yet. But yeah, so 2008, after, the great moves that we mentioned, the Forsberg trade, the Flyers make it to are competing for a playoff spot, and Holmgren trades for a rental, and I think this was a perfect rental trade. Alexander Picard in a second for Vinny Prospal. I didn't mind Picard. He seemed like he had good offensive potential, but you really could tell he wasn't going to do much in the NHL. Second round pick at this time was yeah, sure. Doesn't matter right now. Just don't keep doing it. He did. He kept trading picks. But Vinny Prospal was just so perfect for this team. I think it was him and Briere meshed very well. He scored some pretty big goals in the playoffs. 2008, we had no business making it to the conference finals, but we did. And I think the only reason we lost is because Timonen and Coburn both died.
Yeah, that was, the Penguins pretty much dominated that series anyway, but Vinny Prospal had some huge goals in that Montreal series, though. Montreal was the top seed in the East, and the Flyers took them down pretty easily.
Yeah, Mike Richards was a beast in that series.
Mike Richards was, yes. Much like he was 2 years later, also against Montreal.
Yeah.
But yeah.
2010, I think we handled Montreal so easily because of the whole momentum from coming back from 3-0 against Boston.
Didn't we shut him out 3 times in 5 games with Michael Layton?
We probably did. Yes, we did. Still fucking hate Michael Layton, but he did have some good stats here.
Yeah. I just remember the first 2 games of that series, we blew them. I think the first game was 6-0, and then the second one was 4-1 or 5-1 or something like that.
Yep. And always remember Mike Richards is the shift.
Yeah, in game 5. Completely changing the course of that game.
Yep.
Speaking of Mike Richards, well, not really speaking of Mike Richards, but one of his teammates, Jeff Carter, I'm going to go that way with my third favorite trade, dealing Jeff Carter to Columbus. In exchange, I believe this is a trade where we got Voracek, who, despite his huge cap hit, has been very good for us. And we got the draft pick that turned into Sean Couturier.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. I was so ready for the trade because it came out in rumors 2 hours before it happened. And I'm like, Voracek, fuck yeah. 8th overall, fuck yeah. Jeff Carter, I love you, but see you later. And it actually came to fruition. I'm like, oh yeah, this is crazy. And then the Mike Richards trade happened, and I just what the fuck are they doing now? I just did a complete 180.
Yeah, that was a crazy offseason for the Flyers because they got rid of two of their biggest pieces and brought in a whole bunch of new faces. They brought in Wayne Simmons, brought in Braden Chen, Voracek, Couturier, all those guys. And somehow Peter Laviolette managed to make it work, at least for that first season.
Yeah. I still think that Chris Pronger... Wait, no, we're on post Carter and Richards now.
I think that's the year that Chris Pronger died, though. That's
yeah,
the year
2011, 2012, yeah.
Got the concussion that year.
Yeah, the Yager year.
Yep.
Yeah. Chris Pronger and Jaromir Yager, same time for the Philadelphia Flyers. Crazy fucking thing.
I loved Yager for the 1 year that he was here.
So did I. And you know what? Everything that I felt about him before was just immediately gone because, he was out of the NHL and he comes back, plays for us, and then everything's it's a new slate. This guy is actually a really fucking good hockey player. Let's just follow his career forever and ever. And I think he's still playing in the Czech Republic.
Yeah, one of the most intriguing hockey players definitely of our time.
Definitely. And he was still good even in his final year. I think he was probably playing with fucking Calgary.
It was Calgary or... Yeah, I think that was after he was with Florida.
There's a video
with Florida, he almost took him to the playoffs the 1 year.
Yeah, there's the video of him literally just he can't backskate anymore, so he's just pushing another one of his players. It's fucking hilarious, and it was great because he can't skate anymore, so just give him a push.
That's too funny. All right, so that rounds up our talk about the best trades in Flyers history, and we're going to close out this segment here shortly. But before we do that, we're going to go on a little bit of a rant session here. Steve, I know that you have something in particular that you want to rant about. I think it's something that you found on Twitter.
Here's the thing. I forgot what it was.
You forgot what it was?
I was probably drunk at a bar, and it was probably just people with their terrible fucking takes talking. And, I want to interject, but, they're all the way across the fucking bar, but they're talking so fucking loud. So, yeah. Don't fucking scream at a bar about your terrible hockey takes.
Is that your rant?
No, it's not. I don't remember what it was, but I'm assuming it was something like that.
Oh, man. Sorry. Well,
how about you? You want to rant about anything?
I want to rant about people who don't say thank you when you open the door for them. And it happened to me twice at Wawa when I stopped there on my way here. First off, when I'm going into the store, there's an older lady who's coming in right behind me. I decide to be the nice guy, open the door, hold it open for her. She just walks right past me, doesn't even say anything. I'm like, okay, fuck you, old lady. All you have to do is say thank you.
Shit.
Literally, it's 2 words. And then the same shit happens on my way out. This wasn't an older lady. This is actually a guy probably around our age. I open the door, and meanwhile, I'm holding my drink and something else in my hand, so I only have one free hand to open the door. This guy walks out with nothing in his hands. I hold the door open for him, walks right through, doesn't even say anything. Really?
Yeah.
Come on, man. I know it's just a common courtesy thing, but it's 2 words. And if you don't say thank you for somebody who holds open the door for you, it really kind of says a lot about who you are as a person.
Yeah. But yeah, saying thank you. I just... So many people, I'll be helping people. I work at a bank, and it's, all right, thank you. Anything else I can help with? You know what? Maybe it was. I just wanted to fucking rant about a last-minute customer. And it was a Saturday, and it's 12:58, and we close at 1. So, they come in. First off, she gets out of her car, goes into the back seat, just fumbling around, I guess, for who the fuck knows. The fucking thing's probably in her pocket. It's 12:58. I'm done everything, just waiting to get the fuck out. And she finally comes in, doesn't say anything, and I'm like, oh, God. So my tellers are just whispering to each other, which is awkward as fuck, because I turned the music off so you can hear everything anyway. She finally comes up, and I'm taking over at this point because I'm the quickest at everything. Doing the deposit, I fucking, as a robot, I go, thank you, is there anything else I can help with? Oh yeah, this. I'm like, fuck me. I think I kind of ran about this one of the other Whiskey Rambles, but it just still ingrained in my memory.
Yeah, last-minute customers, and especially their antics, can kind of be pretty frustrating. I know all about them from working in retail for a few years.
Yeah.
It's a pain in the ass.
And don't say, I just made it.
Yeah.
No, the fuck you didn't. You know what time we close. Like, just come in, do your shit, and hope it's fucking quick.
Yeah, if you know that you're going to be there in the last minute and you don't have any other time you can show up, at least have the common courtesy of making it a quick transaction, not making it a complicated one.
Don't say, I just made it. Say, sorry, guy, I know you guys are closing. Like, that's some more common courtesy,
Yeah, seriously. Well, apparently common courtesy is not so common. For me, it's second nature because that's the way that I was raised. Much credit to my parents for bringing me up that way, but a lot of people, it just doesn't exist, which is really a shame.
Yeah, it's fucking terrible, but it's the day we live in now, so we just gotta deal with it.
Yes, it is. Okay, so before we close out here, any final thoughts on the state of the Philadelphia Flyers, the NHL offseason, anything that you want to throw in before we go through our final credits?
The draft's on Thursday, right?
It is.
Thursday, okay.
Still a paying Krebs guy despite the injury?
I still am, but I was seeing that he's ranked like 10th now. So I'm really looking at Philip Robert now, even though, well, hey, we have 4 great young defensemen. Time will tell on Philip Myers, but I see a lot of potential in them. So we got these 2 32-year-olds, but if you look at our prospects, the majority of them are forwards and goalies. So I'm for like rebuilding the defensive side on our prospects. So I'm really looking at Robert now.
Go defense. That's one way to go. I'm still a Cole Caulfield guy. I'm hoping that he falls to 11. It looks like he's not, though. But I still got my hopes up.
I would have said we could trade up, but then when they just traded the second-round pick for Justin Braun.
Yeah, I actually think it's more likely that the 11 gets traded and we don't even pick in the first round this year.
Yeah, it's something I've been saying for so long that I'm open to it, but with these recent trades, now I'm scared.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how things play out.
Yeah, so we'll see. Should be an interesting draft, though. There's been a lot of chatter around everywhere. I think it was Elliot Friedman or Bob McKenzie said, it was like a third of the league, but they're like, these are the most involved teams in trade talks, and Philadelphia is one of them. And it's just weird after 5 years of Hextall, who I still thank for getting us out of cap hell and restocking our prospect system, even though our ice didn't really, or play on the ice didn't really translate as it should have. It's just weird seeing us in all these talks for everyone again. It's kind of exciting, but at the same time, it's worrisome based off the 3 moves that have happened so far.
It's exciting to be in the thick of things, though. It's better than having a boring offseason.
I was hoping to be in talks for Matt Duchene and Joe Pavelski, not Matt Niskanen and Justin Braun.
I know, right? Oh.
And
wishful thinking.
Yeah, and another thing I'll say is the Justin Braun and Matt Niskanen trades, I think you could have just forgone those and kept Gudis and signed an Alex Edler or Anton Strauman and even looked elsewhere for another trade, but here we are now.
At this point, I'm just trying to trust what Chuck Fletcher's doing here. I'm keeping an open mind to it and hoping that he has a bigger master plan.
Yeah. I remember what the rant was about, but I wrote notes, but I don't have them with me. It was something about the Carter Richards trades.
Oh, man. Do you have enough of it to go through it, or do you need your notes?
No, there was... I think
you could save it for next time if you would rather do that.
Yeah, I will.
All right. Well, before we wrap up here, I just want to talk to you guys about Just Food. Just Food is located in Buckingham Green. They provide great catering service. I've had them cater parties a number of times before. They were very well run. I have very great food there. Everything is delicious. You can reach them at 215-794-FOOD. Treat yourself. Take it home. Just Food. All right, so we'll wrap it up for this episode of Disciples of Ed. You can reach us on Twitter. You can find me at radio_Rob. Steve, where can we find you?
At Schmitty324.
And you can find the podcast at ANY Podcast. You can also find us on iTunes, Spreaker, Spotify, basically anywhere where you can stream a podcast. We're there as the Always Next Year Podcast. You can find us at www.alwaysnextyearpodcast.com. We will be coming out with more articles. We'll be getting back on that in the very near future. If you have us on iTunes, please give us a rating, give us a review. Next review, as we said numerous times, gets a picture of my face that you can put wherever the hell you want. It will be autographed and it'll be worth a lot of money someday.
Kind of scared this is like holding people away from, giving us that next review.
It very well might be, but we're still going through with it.
All right.
Anyway, that is it for this episode of Disciples of Ed. We'll be back with another one next week.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back, hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son, still have me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.